Joining me today on the Duopoly report is the independent candidate from New Mexico State House District 19, Enrique Jesus Cardiel. Enrique, thanks for coming on to the show.
For having me on, Steve. I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this particular race. I haven't been doing videos for a while, but I felt like doing a special edition of the Duopoly report because I'm a big fan of independent candidates, third-party candidacies, but also independent candidacies. I actually think that for people of lots of different stripes, that running as an independent actually may be the best way to go in order to give the people more choice at the ballot box in November. Um, Tell me, what are your reasons for running as an independent and not with one of the two big parties?
Well, yeah, people ask that a lot, and it's a fair question. Uh, I'm not, I didn't choose to be independent for this campaign. I've been an independent for a long time, uh, since the 90s. And so I don't see why someone would trust me if I changed my party just to run for an office. I think, uh,
And
you
so,
know,
like you
that is,
so what we're talking the '90s. So we're like looking at nearly 30 years that you've been an independent.
yeah, the majority of my life, of my voting life.
Right, right. And I guess what I get the next natural question I would ask you is that why because you're somewhat plugged in politically, like you know what's going on out there in New Mexico, right?
Yeah.
You've been involved with community activism and issues for a long time. So um, what made you decide to be independent, and what kept you being independent?
Uh, I think the biggest thing that pushed me into being independent was when Bill Clinton signed NAFTA. Uh, I really feel that was like a super far anti-union thing for a Democrat to do. That really left me disillusioned with that the two-party system. And I had been involved in Chicano movement stuff as a student at UNM. So a friend of mine let me know that you could still register with La Raza Unida in New Mexico. So I did, and I've been registered that way, since the 90s. Um, but to run, there's not a organized party necessarily, so it made sense to run as an independent.
Right. Okay. I get you. That your story's similar to mine. It took me till about uh, a little after, especially 1996, but around that time, I have a very similar story to yours. And I've always felt too that while there may be one of the two big parties that I tend to agree with more than the other, that not all of my views fit within the framework of the majority of either the Democratic or Republican parties, um, and so it seemed that independent candidacy was just natural. So now here you are running as an independent in House District 19, and I think one of the neat things about this particular district is, um, some of the other districts around in Albuquerque are a little more competitive, where the difference between the Democrats and Republicans is, 15 points or less in registration. Um, and an independent candidacy, I would think, would, you know, the spoiler thing would come up instantly, especially probably amongst Democrats if you tend to be more left leaning. Um, but in House District 19, only 16% of the registered voters are Republican. There's 30% that are declined to state, no party, or with the minor parties, 1% Libertarian, and the rest Democratic. So, to me, one of the interesting things about this particular district is that um, with such a large chunk of, say, Democratic leaning voters plus the independents, um, there's a high chance that the Republican's going to come in third place in this district, in this race. I mean, no matter whether you or the Democratic nominee, Janelle Anya Nornu, uh, wins, and whether either of you win, I'm predicting that the Republicans going to come in third place. And so this whole like spoiler issue with the Republicans, to me, at least on paper, mathematically, is not an issue. Are you finding that in your district?
But that's excuse me, that's one of the things that made it easier to decide to run. Um, is knowing that uh, I'm not going to be that spoiler, right? Because of the demographics you just said. However, um, there are people who know those numbers, but are still telling people, that I'm going to be the spoiler, right? That it's kind of a traditional scare tactic, uh, which is unfortunate, and so people are putting that out. Even people that know better, people who know the numbers, who are savvy enough, they're doing it because it's one way to just lock people
Yeah.
into voting as for a Democrat instead of voting for who they want, which I think would be what democracy is about. Is you could vote for who you want, and I know the reasons why, like you mentioned in other districts, uh, it's counterproductive sometimes to run, as a third party or as an independent. But I think this district just really um, is much different in that way. Uh, I'm running, because a lot of neighbors asked me to run. So it's not like I uh, was just kind of chomping at the bit for to run for a seat. People want me to continue doing the work for the community, but at a different level. I've been working in this community a long time,
So tell me
and so
about
now,
some of the community work that you've done throughout your life, and maybe even more specifically in the areas where you live. And
yeah, just and just for time, I'll stick primarily to things I've done living here. So I moved into the district in '96. Uh, I started working with uh, community groups around violence prevention, community safety. I work with young people. Uh, I've worked with the neighborhood associations. I've been part of the District 6 Neighborhood Coalition of Neighborhoods. I was the secretary there for a little bit. I was president of my neighborhood association for a little bit. Uh, and then uh, when Gibson, uh, when Lovelace closed on Gibson, some folks got together and created the Southeast Heights Health Coalition. And I was working at Department of Health then, and I ended up going to work for St. Joseph's Community Health, and they were running that coalition. And so they asked me to take on that coalition. And so I ended up working on that. And I ended up working on that for 10 years as a paid facilitator for that project. Uh, a few years as St. Joe's, and then several years as a county employee. Bernalillo County created an urban health position, and so I worked there, um, doing the same work here in the district. We worked on lighting, we worked on planning, sector plans, metropolitan redevelopment plans. Uh, we worked really hard to do syringe pickups because we were going to so many meetings where people were complaining about syringes at parks or in the schools. So we figured out how to get folks trained, and we went out and safely picked up syringes for a while. And then the city took that initiative and worked on that. Uh, we've done some safety walks to highlight uh, how dangerous pedestrian it is for pedestrians in the community. Really, my understanding is the international district part and a little bit further west across San Mateo uh, really is the most dangerous section of road for pedestrians in the United States. And, uh, really needing to invest in that, right? It's not the kind of um, flashy or super uh, fancy kind of political thing to work on, but, it's what needs to be done. People are getting killed. Uh,
right, right,
we worked on lighting. So there's, new lighting in the community. Some of that is from uh, work that I participated in with other neighbors. Hawk Light on Texas, where there's a clinic and a senior living, so that people could cross Central a little safer. So a wide variety of work like that.
That's fantastic. So I guess then, and we this district has changed just recently. We went through our redistricting process in 2021, and House District 19 kind of shifted a little bit to the east. It basically incorporated all of what many neighborhood groups call the international district, and kind of came out of Ridgecrest a little bit, and shifted a little over east and stayed south of Central, going eastward, which kind of changed the nature of that district. And is that something though that I know a lot of the neighborhoods were in the international district were wanting to not be all divided up and together. And is that like this district the area that you've done a lot of your community work in then now?
Yeah, I mean it's a large part, right? So uh, the working kind of definition that I use for international district is Wyoming to San Mateo and Lomas to Gibson, and House District 19 is basically that, but it goes to Washington for a large part of the district. There's a couple places where it does some funny kind of turns, but for the most part, it goes out to Washington, Lomas to Gibson. So it's uh, an extension, and I know, and I've worked with folks there, but obviously, I've worked a lot more in the east of San Mateo.
So, are you getting a lot of support from the local neighborhood areas? Are you running into people that you've worked with all this time, and now you're knocking on their door as a candidate for state legislative office? And have they been surprised?
Yeah, I've knocked on people's doors, and uh, I'll look at their name, when before I go knock, and I'll be like, okay, I'll see if they remember me, and we'll have a good conversation. Yeah, so they're surprised, uh, generally happy. Folks, they really want somebody that's of the neighborhood to be representing, and I've been of this community for over 2 decades already,
And
and I think
I think that to me, like for people who are running without like a large major party and their infrastructure backing them up and all that, it the to me the formula is you do need to be somebody who's been of the community. If you actually have done work and whatever, I would think that it would be easier to get their vote, and you don't have to spend a zillion dollars per vote, slamming them with 14 mail pieces and bombing them with robocalls and everything else, right? That your pitch to them should be a lot easier to give. So let's say I know what some of the other questions might be like, or the ones that I've been thinking of is we've had instances of independence in the legislature. Um, Ms. Barreras from the South Valley in District 12 was elected was elected in 2020 when the Democratic nominee failed to put his district number on the petitions and was disqualified, and there was no one running for office. But luckily, independents could file in the general. She filed. I think there were two people actually, and she won. But not shortly after she was elected into office, she switched her party to Democrat. And one of the things I'm wondering is that are you gonna yeah, caucus with one or the other big parties? Are you gonna stay out of the caucuses? Are you gonna keep your registration when you go into the legislature? And how do you think that might, maybe what are the downsides or what are the upsides of the way that you're looking to go?
yeah, I mean I've worked with a lot of Democrats, throughout my career. I've worked with some Republicans also, but primarily, more so with Democratic Party folks. So my intention is to caucus with the Democratic Party. I've let people know that all the way back to August when the appointment process came, when the seat was vacated, I had put my name in, and so that was a big question then. I let people know, people and party leadership know that my intentions to caucus with the Democratic Party.
Okay.
Uh, you know, because I just think that's just better than being kind of floating on my own. Um, and
Yeah.
there was another question you asked. I was trying to remember it really quick. Um,
I think you got it.
oh,
You said you would be caucusing with the Democrats, and like I mean, I guess the potential upsides or downsides of doing that in your mind.
I mean, I think um, obviously if I caucus with the group, then there'll be the pressure to do what the group is doing. Um, but I think one of the positives is as an independent, I can also decide to say like, I'm not in agreement with this and share the reasons I'm not and do what I need to do. Um, and my intention is not to change my voter registration. Again, I believe democracy should allow for more than two choices. Um, you know, we would be upset if when you went to go buy a car, you only had two colors to choose from,
Right.
right? Well, the United States is supposed to be all about choice and freedom. And so I think, you know, I intend to keep my voter registration as it is. And like I said, just continue to try to do principled work. I think, I don't know, I think I count as a principled progressive, that's going to stand for things that, what we consider progressive things.
So,
And
go ahead.
yeah, and stick with those values that I'm coming in with.
Yeah. So, what would be some of your main thrusts of issues that you would like to pursue and try to accomplish as an elected legislator in Santa Fe?
Yeah, and I've been thinking about that, over the year as this process has gone. And I came in really, and it's still my main thing is to focus on housing, right? We have so many people living outside, uh, that it's terrible for the folks living outside. The folks that complain about it are folks who go to bed in a bed, and have a shower and a bathroom. They're the ones who complain and are upset about folks living outside. But really, the folks living outside are the ones who deal with the real harm, right? Uh, Folks who live outside, unhoused folks, tend to die at an earlier age, right? They die in their 50s,
Sure.
and so there's no reason why in New Mexico, in the United States, that this many people should be living outdoors, right? They should be unhoused. So that's kind of my big thing that I really want to focus on. But I also uh, want to focus on, improving the paid sick leave that there is, right? We have some, it should be better. Uh, you know, Wages, we need to find a way to keep working people uh, able to meet their basic needs, right? We have folks who are working full time who can't afford rent, or, I know people who have lived in their car and had a job, right? Still have to live in a
Sure.
car,
Right.
and and then APD, impounds their car because they got too many tickets for sleeping, at a park or something like that, where they park their car and sleep in the car, and then they lose their job. And so, that's we really need to find better ways to deal with those things,
Right.
and
Right.
so everything from work, um, education, uh, housing, all of those things have to be kind of put in place together. We need to expand healthcare. Uh, you know, uh, Insurance coverage that we have is not adequate, and we need to get folks better insurance and get more folks on insurance so that people can, take time off of work and go get taken care of, right? A lot of people just work until, or go until they're in the emergency room. And by then it's super expensive to them, it's super expensive to the system, and it just is not the right way to go.
Yeah. And by the way, yeah, when you mentioned rents for a second there, I know that there's a lot of groups in Albuquerque that are now coalescing and demanding politicians take up the issue of rent control. Um, But one thing I found is that there's a statute in the state statutes going back to the 60s that specifically prohibits any other, like municipalities or anything, from establishing any kind of rent control law. Would you take up the mantle of looking at possibly getting rid of that statute in the so that, like, not maybe not every town or city needs to do rent control, but maybe in the more expensive towns in the city in the state of New Mexico, that could happen.
Yeah, I think that's something that definitely needs to be taken on, and I would definitely want to be part of that. I would like to. I think, like you're saying, maybe one town doesn't need rent control, things are fine, but Albuquerque rent's gone up 40 something percent in the last year, and there's no way for anybody's paycheck to keep up with that. You know, I
Right.
get paid. I get paid decent, and luckily my mortgage is locked in. But if my mortgage went up 42%, I don't know how long I'd be, staying in where I'm at.
And just for that year, right? And who knows what's going to happen the year after that, or 2 or 3 years down the road. Exactly. And this is something I've seen a lot of renters, friends of mine, young friends of mine, who are struggling with this as we speak. So, is any of the sort of the macro races, like say the governor's race, affecting what's going on with your guys' campaign, as they are both pushing to see who can support the police the most, or swearing that they're the best ones for education, or taking on are some of those bigger topics influencing what's going on in District 19's race?
You know, yeah, those contexts kind of impact everything, whether you want it to or not. So I think really that the kind of tough on crime thing is an approach that people have told me, well, this is what you're going to need to do if you want to win. You're going to have to come out tough on crime. And I think really we got to look at prevention. Uh, I was listening to a great uh, conversation about it today, and one of the things was like we see crime as the point, when somebody pulls the trigger, but there's all these steps that get somebody from being, kind of a healthy, nonviolent person to, pulling a trigger. Uh, and so, what are all the things we need to do to try to keep somebody from getting to that point? And I think really looking at that, um, most people that end up shooting somebody or attacking somebody have been victims of violence themselves at some point. And so, if we deal with folks as somebody who's been victimized, and help them deal with whatever that process was like, you know, we can probably do a lot better than just warehousing folks, right? We put people in cages, and we no longer really want to support educating folks, right? Because we feel like we need to punish people. So if you're in jail, you shouldn't get educated, but we should be supporting folks to get educated, jobs training, all of these things, right?
I mean, including the
How
ones
many?
in jail, right? I mean, like, if
Yeah,
you're incarcerated, I would think that one of the goals would be is to when you by the time you get out, you have more skills at something productive, and not just more skills at committing crimes.
yeah,
Um, yeah.
yeah, and I think uh, the charter school that's at MDC, Gordon Burnell, originally was helping anybody that was at MDC, and then somebody was upset. Uh, this is the way I understand it. Somebody was upset and said, "Well, you can't provide APS money or school money for somebody who's over 21." Uh, and so we're just limiting, how much somebody can advance, right? How
Right.
many people are in jail because they really can't read well enough to have a job, uh, or a higher paying job, and we're going to cut off their means to getting a better paying job, and then wonder why they go back to jail after after they come out, once they return.
Um, I don't. Exum has now changed. It used to be
I
that
saw that.
when you saw it too, that when you had
Yeah,
three or more people, they would time limit you. So, I think what I may do is when we get cut off is we'll just have to reboot the meeting, and I think we can
Yeah,
use
yeah,
the same link,
yeah. I've
and go
done that
from
a
there.
lot.
Jeez. Because actually, I was gonna ask you a question. All right, well, I'll ask you real quick. We'll see if we can get through it. Um,
Right.
so I've heard a couple of interesting things and things that seem positive for your campaign. One is that the Working Families Party has officially endorsed your candidacy in House District 19 over the Democratic nominee. Is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And
Working Families Party,
that's
Ole.
okay. Go ahead. Yeah, tell me the different
Yeah,
organizations that have endorsed you.
Work,
Then.
Working Families Party, Ole. Uh, Actually, let me look it up. I want to get this right because I don't want to insult anybody. The Green Party, uh, we haven't put them on the website yet, but the Green Party has also, uh, and the South Valley. I want to say again, like I said, I want to make sure I say this correctly. Um, the South Valley Regional Association of Acequias has endorsed me, as has Retake Our Democracy and Native Vote. Um, so those are the groups, and then most recently the Green Party, and uh,
And
so
have I heard that there's been some individual elected Democratic officials who have endorsed your candidacy as well?
yes, um, and again, I'm just trying to make sure I get folks done. Well, Kay Bonkua, who's the current representative, is endorsing me, so I think that to me is was kind of the most important one. Uh, you know, former Councilor Ray Garduno, uh, County Commissioner Adrian Barboa, County Commissioner Debbie O'Malley, um, County Treasurer Nancy Beers, Senator Jerry Ortiz Pino, Senator Linda Lopez, uh, Representative Patricia Roybal Caballero, uh, Representative Miguel Garcia, Representative Christine Trujillo, Representative Derry Sarinanya, uh, Mo Maestas, Representative, and Mayor Keller.
Mayor Keller.
Yeah,
Really?
and former school board member Candy Patterson.
Wow. So that's an impressive list of elected officials. If you all don't know out there, he's just named some of their titles, and Mayor Kelly, the mayor of current sitting mayor of Albuquerque. That I would call a real coup. And so, uh, do I get the feeling then that the establishment of the Democratic Party, or parts of the Democratic Party are they're that they're comfortable with splitting off for this particular race and endorsing your candidacy, and I'm certain there must have been a lot of discussion about that before those things came down.
Um, I don't know what they all went through. I know one person felt pressured and withdrew their endorsement early on before I was on the ballot. Um, and some of the folks that I listed, at least one of them has told me about some pressure they had to not endorse me. But yeah, all of these are people that I've worked with over the years, and so they know, I'm not coming in to be some kind of loose cannon, and uh, I'm going to come in and do principled work, and we may disagree, but they know I'm going to do so in a principled way. I'm not just coming in to kind of try to break things down. I'm coming in to try to improve things.
Yeah, well, between those different organizational endorsements and those elected official endorsements, that I would hope that says a lot. I'm sure you're telling other registered Democrats in your district about this, and it's one of the reasons why I think that you have a shot at this, Enrique, and they what I'm trying to tell people out there who want to run third party or want to run independent, that the model that you're creating is really the model. Like, you can't come in from outer space, drop into a district, run as an independent, and expect to get vote. But if you've done the groundwork over the course of time, and you've laid your own foundation for success to run for office, and because you're not going to get. I didn't look at the campaign spending reports. I'm assuming you're getting outspent by your Democratic opponent, right?
Oh yeah, 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 yeah. Uh, 2 to 1, I think.
2 to 1. Well, hey, if it's just 2 to 1, you're doing pretty darn good, I would say. You'll be holding your own. So, so everybody out there, on election day on November the 8th, and of course, early voting is going to start, I believe, on the 17th. If you live in District 19, you may want to consider Enrique Cardiel for your vote. By the way, this is one of the reasons 4 years ago, me and a coalition of libertarians, Republicans, and some good government groups, we fought the Secretary of State who was attempting to put the straight party ticket button back on the ballot, on the voting machines, or on the ballot, and it's for this express reason that I was fighting it, because if you just fill in that Democratic bubble, they're going to miss you unless they specifically think about it. And now, they have to vote every line, so they're going to come to your line and read your name along with the others, and hopefully you'll have more votes because of the we don't do the straight party ticket, that we actually take our time and vote in every single race. So, well, Enrique, I'm going to leave you to pitch whatever you'd like to pitch here at the end. Say whatever you'd like to say to your District 19 constituents, or the people in general watching this, because I had a guy from London who said, "I love your show. Keep doing videos." The magic of YouTube and the internet. What would you like to tell the general population out there? Go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I'd like to tell folks, that I'm asking for your vote because I'm of this community. I've been of this community a long time. Um, our district is 16% Republican, as we had mentioned earlier. So the odds of for folks that are concerned that I'm going to split the vote and get a Republican elected, that's super unlikely. Uh, and I think really what's important is folks have an opportunity and they deserve a choice. And so here we're providing a campaign where there's 3 choices. People get to choose more than the 2 choices that we normally get. And I see that as a plus. I know some people are nervous about that, but I think it's a plus. Democracy is about options, democracy is about participation. And so, you know, I'm trying to create uh, something where we don't have to just kind of do the same things we always do. What, business as usual has not been helpful for District 19 or the rest of us.
Great. All right, Enrique Cardiel, that was great. Thanks for coming on the show. I think you offered your voters in your area another choice, something that they can shoot for. I think we have a race here, disregarding the Republican, that in that area normally gets maybe 20% of the vote, that really we've got a choice between the greater of two goods here. Where normally we're having to choose the lesser of two evils. This is a completely different model, and one that I hope gets repeated across New Mexico, across the country. And by the way, not only in very progressive areas with deep blue areas, but in deep red areas, the Libertarians and the Republicans can go at it, where Democrats only get 15 or 20% of the vote. And I think that it's just as valid for that to be occurring around the state as well, to provide more choices for the voters. So, and I will have Enrique Cardiel's links to his Facebook page, website, place to donate underneath in the description on this video, so that if you want to interact more, you can. So, for the Duopoly Report, this is Steve Caviedes. Thanks for tuning back in on this special edition. Have a good night.